Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a pure 12 Beastmaster Ranger build in Baldur's Gate 3. This works well because they get their best ability at level 11, and we got two great choices for our summons with either the bear or the raven. I'll show you how to build around both of them because they provide different ways of playing. Now with the Beastmaster Ranger, we can actually also use a Find Familiar alongside that. Now for our favorite enemy, if you want to use heavy armor at the start of the game, go with that, but I actually think the best choice would be going with the bounty hunter to give enemies disadvantage on their saving throw against ensnaring strike, which is a pretty good option for crowd control early game. Now I also think that it's better to not go with a beast tamer here, but actually to take the wasteland wanderer or fire, as this gives you fire resistance, which is super common early game. Same as poison damage, so you can go with either of these here. Getting a Find Familiar is nice, but our other summons are much better and don't go down in just one hit. Now, we also got to go with an ability score spread, and I would recommend actually going with 16 Constitution and then going with going 16 Constitution and Dexterity, and then 14 Wisdom. However, you could also swap the Wisdom around with our Constitution. This just gives us a lot more survivability, and I think it ends up being a little bit better. We can also rock the higher Wisdom stat. Level 2 gives us our fighting style, which I think is best to go with defense for the +1 armor class. Archery is great too if we want to use the sharpshooter feat, because this will give a +2 to ranged weapon attacks. So if you just rather use sharpshooter, go with archery. But if you don't like the sharpshooter feat for the penalty to your attack rolls, go with the defense here for the +1 armor class. We also get to take, obviously we're going to go with the ensnaring strike, taking it so that we got the targets have disadvantage on their save against it. I also like to have Hunter's Mark here. These both require concentration, but Hunter's Mark is going to give you a massive boost to your damage early game. Now you can also grab Fog Cloud because this gives you ability to just hide out in with this, but I think it's better to go with the Ensnaring Strike and our Hunter's Mark there. Level 3 gives us our Beastmaster subclass. With this you get the Ranger's Companion, which I'll cover the best ones. The Bear is probably the best. Bear and Boar early game, but later on the Raven and the Bear are the best choice. And we're going to use the Raven for the most part, but also talk about what to do with the Bear. Also, it's nice to grab Longstrider here, but even the Hail of Thorns is an okay damage option. I grab it, usually I don't end up liking using it, but we'll roll with something like that. And then once we get ourselves a level 4, this gives us our first feat. Now, the Alert feat, never a bad option for +5 to initiative. The D4 initiative die in this game basically means that with this, you'll go first. However, we can also go with an increase to our dexterity to offset our... If we want to go with the sharpshooter a little later on, this will offset that a little bit further. Alternatively, you could also just go with sharpshooter to give ourselves a -5 to attack rolls, but to deal additional 10 damage. This applies to arrow of many targets, giving us a huge boost to our damage. But an ability score improvement or alert are two other good choices as well. Level 5 gives us our extra attack. On top of that, we also get the Companion's Bond, which will add our proficiency bonus to its armor class and damage rolls, so a nice +4 to the overall damage. It's pretty nice. This gives us a little bit more survivability with our companions. We also get access to one of the best spells of the game with Spike Growth. This is crowd control that allows for 100 turns, and it slows down the enemy and makes them take piercing damage, which is great. If we want to go full stealth, Pass Without Trace gives a +10 to stealth checks, which can also be a really good choice, and Silence can shut down enemy spellcasters. So those are two other good options for spells if you prefer. Level 6 gives us our finally getting the heavy armor. The other ones don't really matter too much, we just want the heavy armor proficiency. And then going with, again, Find Familiar is an okay choice, but either Wasteland Wanderer or Poison. And I prefer Cold, because around level 7 is when you start to see Ice Storm, and then Cone of Cold, which you can really reduce heavily with this spell here, or this option for the Natural Explorer there. Poison is a good choice too, if you prefer. Level 7 gives us our subclass feature, Exceptional Training, which gives us the bonus action, dash, disengage, and help. So like the Rogue, now our animal companions can get the same benefits there. We also get access to some higher level spells with... I guess we already had access to these, but Pass Without Trace being my personal favorite. Silence being good too if you got spellcasters, although it will shut down thunder damage, so if you Nyralna or any thunder casters, just be mindful of that. Level 8 gives us our Land Stride. Difficult Terrain does not slow us down anymore. Obviously pretty effective. And we get to take another feat, with Alert being a good choice. And also the Crossbow Expert feat is great too, because you can use crossbows at close range and do a ton of damage with them. But I prefer going with a Dexterity improvement. This gives us better armor class and overall initiative as well, but the Alert feat will give us an even higher boost to our initiative, basically ensuring we go first. Level 9 here gives us our Lightning Arrow and also the Conjure Barrage. I would recommend either going with one of these two, but Plant Growth is nice because crowd control without a concentration. I personally prefer Conjure Barrage here at this level, but Lightning Arrow is a good choice too. It's a spell that uses your weapons, just be mindful of that. Level 10 gives us our Hide in Plain Sight, +10 to stealth checks as long as you stand still. Pass Without Trace is a little bit better, but we also get to take another favorite enemy. I guess Sacred Soccer, you get proficiency in religion or arcana here. And Sacred Flame, not you're going to really ever want to use that, but it's an option against shades or anything that takes double damage from a radiant damage. And we're going to go with the Wasteland Wanderer Poison here at level 10. So now we have resistance to fire, cold, and poison damage. Level 11 gives us our best feature as mentioned start, Bestial Fury. So your companion now gets an extra attack and they get more powerful forms, which we'll cover. The Raven can summon in 2 extra birds and the Bear can summon in another bear, which is just amazing. We'll also go with the other Lightning Arrow or Plant Growth. Lightning Arrow is nice because it can be doubled, but the damage output isn't very high. And finally, for our final feat, we could go, I really like Crossbow Expert. I think that this is my personal choice because the damage output that you can get with this is pretty crazy, especially which I'll show you how to get some crazy damage. However, you could also use an Arrow of Darkness to get this advantage on attack rolls as well. So if we use the Darkness route, that's another choice. So you could go with an ability score improvement or the alert feat if you don't want to go with the crossbow expert, because we can set up the ability to hit crossbow shots at close range. I'm also using the hunter outfit by Ren here, so that's a mod. Now for actual gear, I really like the Steel Watcher helmet once you get to Act 3, because this prevents you from getting blinded. So you can have your Raven create a darkness cloud, because the Raven can actually do that when they fly, and you can use that darkness to really basically makes the enemies not able to hit you. Whenever you have darkness set up, they can't make proper line of contact, so they can't cast spells at you, they can't do ranged attacks. They'll sometimes do melee attacks, but they'll have disadvantage, and then they can do throwing attacks, but they're not oftentimes built for that. Another good choice would be to go with the Mask of Soul Perception to offset our sharpshooter penalty. Gives a +2 to attack rolls. Early game haste helmet for the movement speed is great. Helmet of Arcane Acuity can work here with an arrow of many targets. This allows you to land your spells a little more frequently, but I don't think there's much benefit to doing it that way. And you can also just grab the Helmet of Baldur in there, which is not a bad choice, but I think it's best to go with either Steel Watcher helmet. You can also go with a ring, and the Eversight ring it's called. You can get blindness immunity that way. I'm using the Shadow Cloak ring because this will give us additional 1d4 damage whenever we're in shadows. It's huge. If you're the Dark Urge, use the Deathstalker mantle. Otherwise, use the Cloak of Protection. And now the Ballast Armor is the best choice for armor because when we're at close range, we can double our piercing damage. So this is actually quite a big boost to overall damage because with this, you're basically going to be able to do double damage to most targets, even ones that are immune. It says unless they're immune, but it actually goes through immunities. We also get a +2 to initiative here, so we go first. The Heldas Gloves make it a little bit of a difference. You can also use the Dark Justiciar Gauntlets because with these, it's going to deal additional damage when you do Arrow of Many Targets. You could also add in like the Caustic Band here for the extra 2 acid damage, which is always nice. I also got the Boots of Stormy Clamor here, which will give you 2 turns of the enemy 2 turns of reverberation whenever you apply a condition. Only take this if you got the Illithid ability drain, because you can stack reverberation really easily this way. Otherwise, the Evasive Shoes to give you a higher armor class, because we only have 22 AC, which we could further boost up a lot higher with some gear. That'll give you more survivability. Helldusk Boots can also be nice, but it's probably better on someone else, and you can just go with the Disintegrating Nightwalker so you don't slip on ice. Now, a nice combo too, if you really wanted to, instead of the Shadow Cloak ring, or I guess we go instead of the Ring of Defense there, is the Snowburst ring. And then what you can do is take one of your characters here and use the Drake Throat Glaive. And then with this, you want to make sure that your character has their bow out, so go to do a ranged weapon attack or just swap your weapons. And then go to the character here with the Elemental Draconic Age and apply cold damage onto the weapon. This gives you some very powerful crowd control, which doesn't bother our birds because they can fly around. So now our bow does 1d4 of cold damage, and then when we do cold damage, we create ice surfaces, and with an arrow of many targets, you can apply cold surfaces to many targets all at once. For weapons, I'm using the Knife of the Undermountain King. This gives you advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured targets, and increased critical hit chance. This is probably the best choice. You can get it in Act 1. Fowler Alluve is another good choice. Doldor Amaris for additional 7, which becomes 14 with a Ballast Armor critical hit damage. And yeah, I think that Rhapsody also works well here, but the Knife of the Undermountain King is just great because it can also give you advantage on your bow attacks too sometimes. And we also have Vicodia's Walking Fortress. Now, the Gaunter Mail will also give you haste, so you can apply haste to yourself, and it doesn't give you a lethargy condition afterwards, but this does eat your concentration, but it's very powerful. With the Amulet of Greater Health, it puts our constitution or our health score at 148, giving us a lot of actual survivability. Now, for the purposes of this build, I'm going to use the Ravens, and if you're going to use the Bear, I would recommend the Helm of Baldur, because that's just going to be better. This will allow you, the Bears can go to enemies away from you, whereas the Ravens are going to create darkness pockets for you to use. Now, the thing with the Raven is that it's able to actually apply omens, which will give attack rolls advantage, which is crazy. But then you can also summon in 2 allied ravens, so this can further summon in ravens until long rest. They have 13 health, However, you can also go ahead here with something like Hero's Feast, which will boost up their health, and then aid as well, so that takes it up to 25. And with aid, you can pop that down to bring the little level 3 ravens up to 50 health, and then your big bird there up to 81. So that actually gives them quite a bit of extra survivability. But whenever you use the raven here, it's the fly here that'll create, you can see darkness for 2 turns. So that is really good. All right, so I actually summoned in another raven because I have 2 Beastmasters on the team just to show how the birds can actually become even crazier. Now, the first thing we want to do is set up our own darkness here. So we didn't have the same initiative as our bird there. So we got to go ahead with creating darkness by using just this, just attacking with an arrow of darkness. This also, we can set up cold here. So you have to be a little cautious of it, but we're in our darkness here while avoiding the cold. We now have advantage on attack rolls. So what we're going to do is use an arrow many targets to attack from our darkness here. I'd recommend going after a target that you want to get off the battlefield as soon as possible. We had to fly the guiding bolt to give advantage on our teammates' attack, took out that enemy, and then on top of that we created reverberation and ice surfaces. So that was a pretty successful arrow of many targets. You can also use the lightning arrow, especially if you have cold damage or a water set up, because that's going to further stack extra damage. But we want to get that cold damage on as many targets as possible. So I like to go around attacking multiple enemies here. So this one's going to critically hit all 3 of them and create the ice surfaces below them. So that's perfect because we now have a bunch of crowd control built in. And we want to attack them at least all once. So I'm going to move myself over here. We avoided the ice. And then I'm going to use an arrow of many targets to hit this target here. And we'll hopefully spread ice around there. Perfect. Because we have the fire damage on our bow, so the second shot that we do with these enemies is actually going to remove that. I should have mentioned that about the Helldust gloves. It's probably better to use the Dark Justice Air Gauntlets if you're going to use the cold damage boost, because that fire will reduce the snow or the ice below the enemy there. So, and then we get one last concentration. So you can use Heroes or Hunter's Mark, because our ravens will get extra damage against the target. Hunter's Mark also can apply reverberation too. And we want to set down ice surfaces because, yeah, you can see that right there. They are going to slip and fall on it. Our ravens will automatically act for themselves, so they just go around attacking, and they do piercing, so if they're near us with our ballast armor, they get double damage as well. And there's an example of them throwing through darkness because it breaks line of sight, so they can't do their normal spell casting. And since our ravens are flying, they don't get bothered by the ice, and there goes one of our birds. That was one of the non-upcasted ones, but we do have our birds here now. So what you want to do with the birds is use the fly here. So wherever you land is going to create a darkness pocket there. So boom, makes them blinded. Perfect. And then you can go with your, they got the unblack right winds there to be able to summon in the 2 more birds, but the Ren Vision will blind targets. So you can actually blind those that are outside of your darkness pockets here. So I'll go ahead here, 55% chance that we blinded them. We now have advantage on attack rolls against them. And then what we can also do is Ren Vision on another target here, so we can fly over and apply it. We didn't get it at that time, but they also missed their attack there. Perfect. We can also get the bird to go back to its darkness here because it's immune to being blinded. And I have another one here. So the thing is, if you get multiple of these going, you can do some pretty funny stuff because you can create this darkness pocket, which will, oh, I just summoned the birds in there. I meant to do the darkness fly, but you can create a bunch of darkness in the battlefield. You also can use the Shard Spear to get further darkness, so if you have someone with that, it's great. You can see our ravens are actually having a field day with all the enemies here, and this one's going to take a hit, but these ones have 50 health, so they're pretty survivable. The ravens are good for drawing aggro too, because they have a low armor class. They're much less likely to attack your teammates whenever there's a bunch of ravens around. It'll also force the enemy to eat up their bonus action, because they're going to oftentimes jump out of ice or slip and fall like you just saw there. Alright, so we got our ravens to jump this person here. So I think the best choice now is to use an arrow many targets and try to chain to multiple targets. We're going to take this one out with this, and it chained over to that target there. Perfect. I need to get rid of these enemies here that are attacking our birds, though. We have advantage because we just turned invisible for taking out an enemy. Buy every single arrow of many targets you possibly can. Just as you can see there, the damage from it is crazy. That was 4 enemies reduced in a single arrow. So yeah, that's why we want to have those. You never know. Sometimes you may be missing out on an enemy that you just didn't see there. Boom. That chained around to 3 targets now. And it did reverberation, knocking 2 of them prone. So that was perfect. And again, you can sometimes get some hits off on targets that you normally wouldn't be able to hit by using an arrow of many targets. And boom. Our darkness pockets gives us that advantage on attack rolls. We're safe. Our birds can be safe within the darkness. If you have 2 of them on the team, it gets crazy. And even further, if you have like the Shard Spear of the Night, because it has an attack skill that will apply darkness as an area. You can also have a Drow, which will get their own darkness, which you can cast and hold the concentration on. There's a lot of really fun ways to be able to build around this. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.